Selamat sore, ibu-ibu dan bapak-bapak. At every conference, one person will get a sore throat. Today, I'm that person with a sore throat. So I apologize in advance because I know it's terrible to listen to somebody with a sore throat, but I'm with distinguished company that will have no trouble filling up the hour, so I have very little to do. Thank you for staying with us till the end of the day. It is hard to sit through so many panels, but I think every panel prior to this has given us a lot of thought about the theme of the conference. And it's almost tailor-made for what we are going to talk about: trust and power in pivotal times. Who is going to win the next election for the Indonesia presidency and vice presidency will affect Singapore, the region, and the world. And while this is not friends with benefits, if this is speed dating, then hopefully we are the one that you remember after you go home because we're the last one you met. But in a more complex world, especially we talked about Gaza in the morning, what Indonesia does as a middle power with its own agency and what the people of Indonesia do with their agency as voters will definitely shape what we will see in the coming 5 to 10 years. So is there trust in the robustness of Indonesia's democracy? Do we trust that the people of Indonesia will make the right choice? And I use inverted commas because I'm a Singaporean. In that sense, I have no dog in this fight. But Indonesia yang kami mencintai, there are many friends and, if you will, lovers of Indonesia in this room, both from the country and from without. So many of whom have studied the country for years. It is a pivotal election because the country stands on the cusp of becoming a developed economy, and whomever will become the next president has a whole list of things to do, domestically and internationally. You can read the bios of the two speakers on the website. You can also read their abstracts. Mas Yanuar, who loves Balestier Road's Tau Sapiang, will be our first speaker. He will speak without slides, given that he's a senior lecturer at a University of Philosophy, but he's also expert coordinator at the National Secretariat for SDG implementation at the Ministry of National Development Planning. Mas Burhan, who's sitting next to me, is one of Indonesia's, if you will, foremost pollsters. He's executive director of Indicator Politik Indonesia. He will use slides, he will speak second. He's also a full professor of political science at Syarif Hidayatullah State Islamic University in Jakarta. So without further ado, let me invite Dr. Yanuar Nugroho to speak first.
Thank you. Good afternoon, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor, of course, to be here and to share with you about the election, particularly presidential elections that will happen 35 days from now. So, I want to structure my remarks based on some questions already addressed, given to me. 1. What do the presidential and running mate nominees reveal about the state of the political elites? Few things. 1. Coalition building. There has been shifting alliances and power dynamics among political elites. Coalition used to support Jokowi has now split. Most go to Prabowo, then Ganjar, and the rest to Anies. Second, representation of political ideologies. In Indonesia's case, this is quite unclear. I will explain to you later. But perhaps roughly, Prabowo represents more populist agenda. Ganjar, more nationalist, and Anies, more reformist. 3. Approach to key issues. Prabowo Subianto put forward continuation. Anies, change. Ganjar, improvement. This reflects the main policy approach in key issues such as economic policy, corruption, environmental concerns, and human rights. In terms of balance of power, Anies represents the intellectuals and idealists, while Prabowo is trying to attract youth at the forefront. And Ganjar identifies himself with commoners, rakyat jelata. Role of political dynasties. Initially, both Prabowo and Ganjar claimed to be supported by Jokowi. Initially. But after Gibran was appointed vice president candidate through a problematic process, Ganjar then responded by positioning himself to criticize Jokowi, to his unfavorable result. Now Ganjar uses the narrative that he is the better version of Jokowi, and Anies does not come in this picture. Instead, he pushes his own image as entirely different candidate, having no common similarities to Jokowi. That's part one. Part two. Do the machinations and dynastic politics matter to the electorate? Mas Burhan will tell you more using numbers, but this is my answer. Jokowi's approval rate remains high. Gibran candidacy is seen as Jokowi's presence and support to Prabowo. And it turns out that it works in Prabowo's favor. So although some might disapprove and are against dynastic politics, but in practice, it affects less too many. While Prabowo now enjoys this, for Jokowi, actually the real game will be 2029, when Gibran will run as presidential candidate. Next part. What role are Jokowi and the other power brokers playing in the past few months? The answer is clear. Securing their interest, no more. Jokowi supports his own son candidacy and now even mobilizes state apparatus, including military and police, and facilities, of course, unofficially, if not politicizes some of his own major policy, such as social assistance. He bluntly ignores neutrality of civil service, military and police, and even lets conflict of interests to happen by issuing presidential regulation stating clearly that public officials from minister level to mayor can remain in their posts even when they are running for presidential election or being actively involved. While for business and business elites, out of pragmatism, most of them support Prabowo, but some are forced to do so or being put in trouble if they support others. Some are brave enough, although in silence, to support Anies and Ganjar. Yet big business, coal, palm oil, however, will not be affected as they support all candidates, of course, with some conditions. In bahasa Indonesia, main dua kaki. They are for everyone. What about civil society? They are losing influence, although still ideologically distinct. Some of them support Anies, more of them support Ganjar, but not much, if not none, with Prabowo. What about religious leaders? NU, the biggest Muslim organization, the leadership allegedly supports Prabowo and persuades that the congregation of NU should do the same. But some, particularly the members of PKB, Muhaimin's party, they support Anies. And the intellectual wing of Nahdlatul Ulama support Ganjar. What about other religions? At least I know one. The Indonesian Bishop Conference gathered a synodal meeting end of November, and Ganjar and Mahfud MD was present. And this is seen as support of Catholic Church to Ganjar. Although, of course, that's not official case. And still, some are also supporting Anies and Prabowo. That's part 3, rather long, sorry. Part 4. What are their main economic strategy? Prabowo Subianto targets 6 to 7% of economic growth per year with one strategy called Jokowinomics, meaning Pancasila economy. You know? Ganjar targets 7% per year with one strategy so-called we have all, semua ada di kita. Anies targets 5.5 to 6.5% per year with 3 strategies: shared prosperity, wealth distribution, and social justice. The similarities, 3 of them, they are promoting economic growth. All of them aim to accelerate Indonesia's economic growth, to improve living standards and reduce poverty. Second, they all recognizes the importance of strengthening Indonesia's industrial base to reduce reliance on imports and enhance export competitiveness. 3, they all acknowledge the need for better infrastructure to support economic activity and facilitate trade and investment. What are the differences? 1, on protectionism and liberalizations. Prabowo's focus on protectionism contrasts with Anies' emphasis on liberalization and market-based solutions. Ganjar's approach seeks a balance between protecting domestic industries and fostering FDI-based innovation. On the role of government, Prabowo favors more active role of government in directing economic policy. Anies advocates limited government role but greater reliance on private sector initiatives. Ganjar's approach is more middle ground. Government only plays a strategic role in guiding economic development. And lastly, on social equity and environmental sustainability, Anies and Ganjar puts strong emphasis on social inequality and environmental concerns. Prabowo's primary focus is on economic growth and national self-sufficiency. That's part 4. Part 5. Maybe your question is here. Will Jokowi's signature policies, including Nusantara, the new capital, will continue? Will the signature policies continue? My answer is yes, a clear yes. Jokowi's signature policies can be roughly, actually, grouped into 3. 1, infrastructure, particularly connectivity infrastructure, ports, industrial complex, economic zones, and all candidates see this as crucial. 2nd, social protection, particularly social assistance part, bantuan sosial. All candidates also see that this is key, populist, and they cannot but continue this. The way it is delivered may be different to some extent, but certainly all of them will continue. 3, downstreaming, we call it hilirisasi in bahasa Indonesia, and industrialization. All candidates will continue this policy. They know how important it is not to sell the raw materials or commodities. The value added has to be enjoyed as much as possible by and in Indonesia. And this is not limited to mining or extractive sectors, but also agriculture, fisheries, and even digital. Anies and Ganjar even clearly declare that they will not stop at downstreaming, but re-industrialization. On top of these 3, of course, Nusantara, the new capital. Both Ganjar and Prabowo will continue. Prabowo strongly supports for the IKN project, new capital, stating that it is necessary to develop other parts of the country. He emphasizes on the planning and execution of the project, ensures the execution is done sustainably and environmentally responsible, according to Prabowo. Ganjar has neutral support on the project. He says that studying the issue is needed before making decision, expressed concerns on the potential impact of the new capital on the environment and livelihoods of indigenous people in East Kalimantan, and he is brave enough to add that he offers corrective measures for what might have been neglected in the development of IKN so far. Anies, on the other hand, although campaigns for change and is known to be critical and holding policy against moving the capital, actually, well, he cannot do much. It is not mentioned in the vision and mission document. He questioned its feasibility and cost, argued that the government should focus on addressing other issues such as poverty and inequality. But actually he could not do anything than delaying or slowing down the development, unless he can change the law. But even if, and this is a big if, he wins, his coalition might not be strong enough to change the law. So he is forced to continue. He may well delay, but he cannot stop. Last part, my reflections. Why this all happened? My basic argument, in Indonesia, the political landscape has been much dominated by the contestation of interest rather than of ideas. If there is one main Jokowi's legacy in his 9 years in power, that despite impressive development achievement, it is a fundamental change in politics. that Indonesia's politics today is all about fighting for interest, not challenging ideas. Less and less room for ideals, including contestation of ideas, ideologies, but much more and growing room for interest for power and resources. We have seen no significant tension in the parliament due to no real opposition, except maybe from a small party, PKS, and even it is not ideological. And sadly, I would say the same goes with civil society organizations, which operate with less ideals but more interest. This happens to a large extent because of the state of the political parties and civil society. First, political parties and even civil society organizations today have no firm ideological basis or foundation, let alone willingness to pursue common good. They run transactional politics and only based on mere interest for power and resources. Second, regeneration stagnates. Political parties fail to make themselves interesting and attracting for young people, contributing to and at the same time becoming a fertile ground to political dynasty or dynastic politics. The same goes with civil society. As a result, there is no real check and balances to the power exercised by executive from the legislative and from civil society. Government can exercise anything they wish, resembling a tyranny, almost without control from the parliament and only insignificant objections from civil society. For example, in the case of changing law of KPK, Commissioner Delegation Commission, Omnibus Law, pushing for regional elections despite COVID, and so on and so forth, including new capital law. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the lens I offer to you to see or to analyze the 2024 election. After Jokowi's attempt or series of attempts to extend his term in power failed, and that he must now go. Thank you.
You can see that his left brain is very strong, and he bang on the nose, 45 seconds left. I'd like to introduce and invite Pak Burhan to go up and give his presentation.
Thank you, Julia. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to extend my deepest thanks for the opportunity to speak here. I am so honored to be invited by ISEAS for Regional Outlook Forum this year, and so thrilled to share some update on key political development in Indonesia, especially on the race for presidency. So the main question that has been given to me is what the latest poll showing about the presidential candidate level of support 1 month before the election. That's the only question that I have to explain in this presentation. So the electability of candidate in Indonesia is not only influenced by candidate personal quality or how capable the presidential candidate or his team in reaching out voters, or how resonate the message or narrative he brings in the campaign received by the public. Since the first presidential election was held in Indonesia 2004, contextual factors influence about the electoral landscape. So the higher the approval of president, the more electability the presidential candidate associated with him will increase. And in this case, Jokowi's defense minister, Prabowo Subianto, who is running with his son, Gibran Rakabuming Raka. In recent past, Ganjar Pranowo also enjoyed positive correlation with Jokowi's approval. And you know that Ganjar, former Central Java governor, he come from the same party with Jokowi, PDIP. So that's why he also able to enjoy positive correlation with Jokowi. But since Gibran was officially announced as Prabowo's running mate, more Jokowi voters supported Prabowo than Ganjar. On the other hand, those dissatisfied voters Those who dissatisfied with Jokowi's performance tend to flock to Anies Baswedan, a former Jakarta governor who defeated Jokowi ally in the last Jakarta election. And the data really evident since Anies proclaimed himself as a candidate who advocate a narrative of change, those dissatisfied voters more likely to vote for Anies. And I just want to show you some slide. So credible survey show that Jokowi is still popular, even though he recently criticized heavily by issues related to dynastic politics, because he was perceived to meddle behind the scene to push Gibran running as Prabowo's running mate by passing a judicial review ruling by Mahkamah Konstitusi, a constitutional court, which at the time led by Jokowi's brother-in-law, Anwar Usman. As can be seen by this slide, even though there is a slight decline until December 2023, Jokowi's approval still around 74%. Most are satisfied because of massive distribution of social assistance or bansos and infrastructure development. This graph also shows about the parallel relationship between the level of approval rating and the level of inflation. So as inflation rise, the president approval rating drop. If inflation is low, satisfaction the president will be high. And the logic is simple. When inflation is low, prices for goods more affordable, and then people therefore satisfied with the government. And this explains why overall satisfaction with Jokowi is higher than SPY. As you can see from the upper right corner, Jokowi overall is able to control prices and maintain a low inflation rate compared to when SPY was in office. So the high approval rating of Jokowi has positioned him as a kingmaker who can determine the direction of election, at least at elite level, as you can see from the emergence of Prabowo Gibran ticket. Meanwhile, SPY, the blue line, was unable to become a kingmaker in 2014 due to a sharp decline his approval rating 3 years prior he ended his term. So 2024 presidential election will not only be marked by battles between presidential candidates, not only be marked by battles between vice presidential candidates, but also between kingmakers. And Anies Mohaimin ticket cannot be separated from the role of Surya Paloh, the chairman of Nasdem Party, who nominated Anies for the first time in 2022. And Ganjar Mahfud ticket cannot be separated from the figure of Megawati Soekarno Putri, the chairperson of PDIP, the ruling party, and Prabowo Gibran camp has repeatedly claimed that Jokowi is fully behind the presidential ticket. And this battle between kingmakers was confirmed by Nasdem elite Ahmad Sahroni, who uploaded a post on his Instagram account featuring Surya Paloh behind candidate pair number 1, Anies Mohaimin, and Jokowi for Prabowo Gibran, and then Megawati for Ganjar Mahfud. And this proved to be blunder, because as bad as Jokowi, he is still more popular than Surya Paloh or Megawati. So more than 10,000 comments on this post, most of them said that they intended to vote for Prabowo because of Jokowi factors. I'm now getting to the interesting part of my presentation, who will do well in the upcoming election. Credible poll show that Prabowo Gibran is currently ahead at electability range 43 to 46%. Internal poll conducted by its rival also saw similar numbers. What is still unclear is whether the remaining months Prabowo will be able to win only in one round or force into the second round. Note that in Indonesian system, if no candidate is able to surpass 50% plus one, then a runoff will be set in motion. Then another unanswered question is, if there is a runoff election, which candidate among Anies or Ganjar will advance to the second round? And this is the detail of the latest electability, and I will show you the trend. And this illustrates the trend in the electability of the three candidates. And look at in the past 8 weeks, you can see that there is a competitive electoral battle. But as you know that Ganjar versus Prabowo, Ganjar for the last 2 years basically at the top of the survey, but this ended in October 2023 when Gibran was officially announced as Prabowo running mate. And since that time, more Jokowi voters switched to Prabowo Subianto. Note that Jokowi vote in 2019 55%, while PDIP just only 19%. So those Jokowi voters who switched from Ganjar to Prabowo mostly from Jokowi non-PDIP voters. And this significant increase in late October, early November has raised hope for Prabowo's camp to win the presidential election only in one round. However, recent survey trend data shows a stagnant support for this ticket. Even though he's still at the top, the electability of this candidate has barely moved. It seems that a runoff is inevitable unless something extraordinary happens again, such as what happened after Prabowo Gibran official announcement. Don't forget that all resources have been made where Jokowi openly or implicitly helps Prabowo Gibran. However, Prabowo Gibran electability will also be subject to the Gen Z and millennial paradox discount. So young voters, they are indeed the largest number of voters in the upcoming election, according to BPS, Indonesian Statistical Bureau, 53% of voters categorized as youth, and according to the polls, Prabowo Gibran hold a commanding lead in that category. But this also presents a challenge, since voter turnout based on previous election among Gen Z and millennial is far below 80%. And imperfect distribution landscape skewed to the right, and the militancy opposing voters camp, especially among Anies supporters, is high. So what is interesting is that the recent surveys show that Anies Baswedan has the potential to advance to the second round if Prabowo Gibran fail to win in one round. Although Anies' advantage against Ganjar is very slim, so statistically Ganjar also has the chance of qualifying for the second round. Jokowi's support for Prabowo not only has a negative impact for Ganjar, but also on PDIP. And recent surveys show that Gerindra has overtook PDIP. Of course, it should be noted that the last survey that I did, based on phone survey, and there are 20% of Indonesian population who don't have landline and HP. So it means we should waiting for face-to-face survey to look at whether Gerindra already overtook or outperformed PDIP. Because when we have in-person survey, usually support for PDIP is slightly higher compared to survey by phone. But the difference, of course, between Gerindra and PDIP within margin of error and the legislative election, if this happened, could be the end of PDIP reigning era. So if PDIP lose, the curse of ruling party 10-year cycle pattern will repeat itself. There has never been a party in power for more than 10 years in Indonesia. PDIP won 99 and then was replaced by Golkar 2004. 2009, Democratic Party, SBY Party, came out as the ruling party, but 5 years later, it was replaced by PDIP 2014. And then the first time in Indonesian history, PDIP is able to maintain its victory 2019. So PDIP to wins election cannot be separated from the figure of Jokowi. Unfortunately, Jokowi now is leaning toward Prabowo, which is a blessing for Gerindra, a party that is founded by Prabowo. So aside from presidential victory for Anies Baswedan, who has stated in public on his disapproval of IKN, the new capital project as Jokowi's most ambitious physical legacy, most observers predict that there will be no significant shift in terms of economic, domestic, and foreign policy, posturing shift under Prabowo and Ganjar, because both contenders are still competing for the same pool of voters who are content with President Jokowi's program and agenda. And there are few indications until now that the presidential and parliamentary election will result in significant shift in economic policy, because in Indonesia, every candidate, every political parties face the same geopolitical and economic challenge, and their general response overall is pragmatic. They will emphasize their differences, but once they are in office, they will seek pragmatic and concrete solutions. So except for religious issues, presidential candidate and Indonesian party system cannot be distinguished from an economic standpoint due to unclear programmatic aspect, and major change in government policy are unlikely in the future. And despite a rising rhetoric and tension during campaigning, 2024 election is expected to be held quite safely. Of course, many observers have expressed concern about the quality of the election. Compared to 2019, there has been a shift from the issue of identity politics to the issue of violating constitution, especially with regard to Gibran candidacy, and the issue of neutrality of the apparatus, the issue of Jokowi involvement in the election, and so on and so forth. And the good news is that despite its flaws, Indonesian democracy has survived so far because of a kind of elite settlement. Namely, despite the country political elite still being corrupt, incompetent in so many levels, they still believe democracy is the only game in town. So there is no political deadlock in Indonesian history, unlike Thailand or unlike Egypt. So when Indonesian politicians lose an election, they file an appeal to the Constitutional Court, and even if the court rules against them, they will accept it. And this occurs not only at national level, but also at local level. Dozens of local elections has been conducted. Once the result not really favor in him, they just come to Constitutional Court, and then when they decided that they lose, they will accept. So despite the painful defeat, politicians in Indonesia continue to believe that democracy is the best form of government. I will stop my presentation. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Thank you.
Our time here was like
That's good.
2 minutes.
Sorry.
So now we reach Q&A, and if you have questions, please go to the mics or put up your hand if you're not near one of them, and somebody will come to you with a mic. If you're watching us online, please feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A portion at the bottom of your screen. If you hit that, you can type in your question. It'll show up on the screen here for everyone to see. Okay, please go ahead, Meredith.
Okay, thanks. This is a question probably for Burhan. And I should first interject and say, Eve says hi. I'm wondering, what is it that's actually driving vote choice among different segments? In other words, you mentioned the Bansos for Jokowi as really priming a lot of his support. But if you look at different segments of the population, we heard of how, for instance, different religious communities or different civil society groups in the prior presentation, Prof. Yanuar, are shaped, how those alignments stack up right now. But it seems as though, Jokowi's initial poll was more about his own charisma and his leadership at the municipal level. That now seems to have translated into something that may be dynastic, into something that's more of a political machine, but it's not linked to a party, clearly. And it's hard to say whether what's driving support for him is a policy choice or an identity affiliation or something else, in as much as he's able to transfer that support to his son. So is there, do you find differences among maybe age segments or regional segments in terms of what the specific issues are that are driving support? And what this then means, you touched on this a little bit, but what does this mean ultimately for PDIP? Is this what finally propels Mega out of a decision-making role, for instance, or is she simply invulnerable within the party if this is what really sinks brings the 10-year rule into effect for PDIP?
Thank you. And I would suggest that after Mas Burhan answers, Yanuar can also answer on PDIP if you want. One general note, so when we're up on stage, the mic is very echoey, so that's why we have trouble hearing the person speaking. So I will request after this that you speak slower than your normal pace. Singaporeans speak very fast. Indonesians speak even faster, but it's very hard to hear. That's why all of us are trying to figure out what's going on. So again, the question roughly is, what is driving the poll numbers, right? Is it a policy decision on the part of the voter? Is it transference of personality, if you will? I think we didn't touch on this in either presentation. I think there's an element of political dynasty, hereditary power, Wayu, terms that sound a bit woo-woo, but even in a thriving democracy, or depending on who you are, a dead democracy, we have the Clintons and the Bushes in a 235-year-old democracy. We had January 6th in the US. I say we because I lived in the US for a long time. I was there when DC was depressed on the day after Trump got elected. It was raining. It was a sad day. My dog walker was sad. My postman was sad. So I'll let Mas Burhan answer, but I propose Mas Yanuar also answers the point on PDIP and Megawati. Please.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you for your question. Basically, when we have a question and then ask them what make them satisfied with Jokowi, most of them mention because of social assistance. So it's quite different. Before COVID pandemic happens, most of Jokowi voters satisfied with him because of infrastructure development. But since 2022 until now, when Indonesian government launched lots of social assistance program, and then they started to love Jokowi because of bansos or social assistance issues, and so that's why, despite the fact that there is a tension between Jokowi and Megawati now, the grassroots. The PDIP grassroots still love him. so I don't know what happened, but at least I asked I met with a lot of people at grassroots, and they say that Jokowi is a leader with a character of being there. So this is something new for them, because every politician just try to keep away from the people, but Jokowi, they understand that Jokowi is not perfect politician, but according to the people, Jokowi is a politician who always being there when people need him. So that's why, despite the fact that Jokowi now, intention with PDIP, they still love him. 75% to 78% of PDIP voters still satisfied with Jokowi, despite the fact that at elite level, Megawati and Jokowi now is really in bad position. Even now, today, Jokowi, conducted foreign trip when his political party, PDIP, has birthday event. Today. So it's very rare, but this is what happened, and I think we will just look at the tension, especially after the election. So PDIP doesn't want to punish Jokowi right now because they really understand if they fire Jokowi from PDIP, that will affect PDIP electability. So they are waiting for the next election, and after the legislative election, I think Megawati will punish him.
Well, let me add some more here. If you remember the graphics that Mas Burhan put, you will see that that Jokowi electability or Jokowi's popularity goes with the economic indicators, not political. So I think that's one explanation. Second, continuing what Mas Burhan mentioned earlier, this is even why at the moment now there is a, I don't know whether it could be said like black campaign, but I just returned back from Solo. Solo is my hometown in Java. The main narratives in the grassroots is that if you do not vote for Prabowo, or if Prabowo loses, social assistance will be stopped. That is the main narratives in the grassroots. And I think that plays quite significant effect. Second, Mas Burhan mentioned about that Jokowi is being known as a leader who is always there for the people because of his very famous blusuan, meaning goes down to the street level, basically, go to the markets. And this is actually very not Prabowo. Prabowo never did that. He forced himself to do that. So there was now another campaign started in East Java. The hashtag is Prabowo bukan Jokowi. Prabowo is not Jokowi. Who resembles more Jokowi is Ganjar. So I think these are the some other side stories, but I agree with Mas Burhan, where Jokowi's popularity remain high because his popularity attached to the economic performance. So whenever inflation gets high, the price goes up, then Jokowi's popularity goes down. But when he is able to maintain that, that's what I can say.
Inflation is everybody's running mate. Pak Lewa, silakan.
Yes, my name is Lewa. I work for Channel News Asia. Quick question. So, is it fair to say that Jokowi has betrayed reformasi? And then Nusantara, of course, the project must continue, but don't you think that because the interests of businessmen such as Prabowo's brother-in-law must be protected? And then, if I may call the whole thing messy, the whole mess, is it fair to blame Megawati for not preparing a successor? Thank you.
Just to clarify, messnia, what do you refer to as the mess? The whole...
The mess, the whole thing that now, Jokowi is supporting Prabowo. He's supposed to support Ganjar, but the whole thing, in my word, in my
and to both,
is a mess.
To both speakers?
To both speakers, thank you.
Itulah demokrasi, yeah? Who would like to take it first?
Okay, let me take this first, and then Mas Burhan may have some more to add. If you ask me, I was on the street 1998. Even I was chased by the military. I had to hide in the morgue of Jakarta Hospital. And what happens now, if you ask me, has he betrayed democracy? Has he betrayed reformasi? I would say yes. You're asking me. Okay. Yes, the way he supports his own son to run. He is the only president in the world whose son and son-in-law are mayors, while he is still sitting president, and advance his own other son to be chief of a political party. So I think I don't understand why it happened, but yes, IKN I will answer later. But do you think Megawati is to blame? I put this in fulcrum. I think I don't know 1 or 2, and also I put this full page in Kompas. The title is Kenegarawanan. So basically, it's perpanjangan, extension of power and statesmanship. You can check in Kompas. I think they translated it into English. Is Megawati to blame? I don't know. It really depends on the perspective you are using. But from my interview, I don't know whether it will be published in the next fulcrum with Yos or not. Julia, you are the editor. Not fulcrum, perspective. We interviewed Secretary General of PDIP. Everything started when, during COVID, Jokowi proposed the ideas of extending his term for the other 3 years because of COVID's impact. He gathered all political party leaders in the palace. Everyone agreed except Megawati. Megawati said, no, there is no extension. So that's not the third terms, but extension from 2024 to 2027. So extension of 3 years. And Megawati said, no, we must respect this. You have to step down 2024 and we have election. If this is seen as a mess, I don't know. But to me, I don't see it that way. To me. This may have something to do with it. Okay. On the IKN, well, I think you can read the book that I co-edited with Julia.
I'll give you a copy. We'll sign it for you outside. Maritas, please go ahead.
Yes, I just a quick question. It has to do with the Marcoses in the Philippines. But I think to correct you, Yanuar, Marcos is also the president, whose son is in Congress, whose sister is in the Senate, whose nephew is governor of a province. So it's not only Jokowi. But anyway.
Thank you. So we have similarities here. Okay.
Yeah.
No, we are following politics.
Oh, we are following you, maybe. Okay.
The Philippinization of Indonesian politics, as you said. But I have a question.
Next year's ROF panel.
Yeah. I have a question because this is a Marcos question. How was Prabowo, a former general, alleged to be a human rights violator, son-in-law of the late dictator, how was he able to rehabilitate himself?
So I will ask the 2 questions that online people have asked, but a quick sort of glib answer is he's an ex-son-in-law. They were divorced, but I'll let the 2 think about it. We have 2 online questions. The first is how does the rural communities vote differently compared to the urban constituencies, if you will, and how will that affect results? And then that's from Elisa Luder, who's one of our ISEAS affiliates. And then the other question is from Crisis 24, Sharanya Anguraj. This question is for Burhan. While he notes that most candidates are focusing on economic pragmatism, is there any difference in foreign policy orientation, especially with respect to China? So I'll leave it to the 2 speakers, how they want. Do you want to split it?
Yes.
So
yes.
Mas Burhan, maybe start with the rural-urban, and then Yanwar can pick up on Maritas' question. And then we can...
But I just want to give a short response to Maritas.
Sure.
Why Prabowo has been successfully politically rehabilitated in Indonesian case 2009 when Megawati was running for president. She picked Prabowo as her running mate. So that's the first time Prabowo dosa, Prabowo sin has been observed. Yeah, that's the first time. And then 2014, 2019, he was running again as presidential candidate, and everybody just forget, his record on human rights, especially among youth. Yeah. So now 54% of youth in Indonesia stated that they are intending to vote for Prabowo, especially for those who were born after Reformasi. So because they don't have experiential memory on what happened during Suharto era. And they like, Prabowo's campaign, Gemoy. How to say in English? Gemoy. It's like
We've deliberated how to translate Gemoy. Cute, adorable, chubby, grandfatherly, carry teddy bear everywhere.
Yeah.
That's a very complicated explanation. Gemoy, that's Prabowo's rehabilitated image. But I think to be more serious for Maritas' question, to me it's a failure of teaching history to your children. And I think you see that common to not just Southeast Asia. America does not want to remember that it's the only country in the world that has dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Japan. It's a tactic, I would say, all democracies and autocracies, authoritarian governments, any government will use memory as a tool. And there's a whole field of studies that we unfortunately don't have time for today, but I think there's a common thread through this region of autocracy and authoritarianism in a way rising, or even in a democracy where it's hard to teach properly your history. And that's what we're seeing today.
Urban rural?
Urban rural.
Sorry,
go ahead. So about rural-urban voters, so it's clearly evident in the data that there is urban-urban divide in terms of election next month. So those who live in rural areas more likely to vote for Prabowo. And those who live in urban are more likely to vote for Anies and Ganjar. So that's the data says. And maybe it's correlate with Jokowi support base, because most Jokowi voters are likely to live in rural rather than urban, especially after after Jokowi gave his blessing to Gibran to run. Those Jokowi rational voters really disillusioned with Jokowi. They're really angry, but Jokowi do not lose his support from rural basis.
So we're at the 2-minute mark. We have the question on Chinese foreign policy, attitude towards China on foreign policy.
China foreign policy.
Whether the candidates
the way I see it from analyzing the vision and mission, Prabowo and Ganjar, I think is more, I would say, welcoming for China. While the U.S. Anies policy that mentioned in his vision and mission document, I think is not against China, but more critical. So if you look at the U.S. China, I think particularly because Prabowo and Ganjar will continue Jokowi's project, particularly infrastructure, downstreaming, I think those are more favorable for Chinese business government. But in Anies might be rather different.
Yeah, just very briefly, Syarif from Malaysia. Just 2-part brief question. One is, how much impact do you think the debates will have come February 14, and if there's a second round? And secondly, more generally, there will be a temptation, given everything we've discussed about the quote-unquote anti-democratic moves, coexisting alongside the continued support for Prabowo and Gibran. There'll be a temptation to read that as Indonesians being, driven by rice bowl issues and less about democratic principles. How accurate is that analysis, or is that too simple? And if it is accurate, I wonder what you think, what that means for Indonesia's democracy long term. Thanks.
Okay.
You first.
Thank you. I've been involved in the 2014 and then 2019 and now 2024 debates, although in different positions. I think debates, presidential debates, maybe contribute 2 to 3% maximum. The most important thing is canvassing at the grassroots level. And now with the young people, those who controls and occupy social media space. So debates 2 to 3% maximum, I think. But maybe Mas Burhan has different data. Second, of course, nothing that simple. Even when I mentioned earlier, answering the question whether Megawati should be blamed, the answer is no, but she plays some roles, of course. And your question, whether this can be simplified as such, I'm not sure. If you look at the vision and mission documents, I serve as the Deputy Chief of Staff in the first period of Pak Jokowi. You can discount around 70% of what they say in the vision and mission documents. When political vision is translated into development programs, many things are lost in translation, really. It really depends on the technocratic ability of the cabinet. So to me, well, this might send some message into the democracy status or democracy stage of Indonesia. Maybe to some extent we are setting back, maybe some extent, let's see. I think we should not undermine the public. I think they will really choose carefully. I was given, I was interviewed by a few medias in Indonesia, but it was not put in the media. I said something like this. If this is a pure election, the result would be different compared to if this is, I put that, military operation. With politicizing bansos, the social assistance, with making sure that that there's no neutrality in military and police and state apparatus. To me, it's very difficult. So yes, you said it cannot be simplified, but yes, the state of democracy of Indonesia will be in a big question mark. People will start questioning about Indonesia's democracy. But then when it comes into government business, whoever wins will have to have technocratic ability. For example, Prabowo promises to deliver free milk and free lunch from preschool up to high school. That would cost 400 trillion rupiah. I don't know whether that kind of technocratic challenge is already addressed or that's only for electoral purpose. That's why I see, whenever I see vision and mission documents of any candidates, I will discount at least 70% when it comes to the implementation. That was my job. That was my job to translate political vision
Maybe
of
just a
Jokowi into
free milk once a week. I'll let Mas Burhan have the last word on the
debate.
and
Okay.
if you want the second round.
Yeah.
And then we'll have to close, unfortunately.
Yeah, so it's true that Prabowo now is front runner in the survey, and the electability gap is quite significant compared to Anies or Ganjar. Even if we look at head-to-head simulation in the survey, Prabowo still ahead versus Anies or versus Ganjar, because if Anies or Ganjar fail to advance to the second round, support base for one of them are likely to support Prabowo rather than Anies or Ganjar. Because Prabowo now positioned himself as the middle candidate. So for example, if Ganjar failed to pass through the first round, those nationalist voters more likely to vote for Prabowo rather than Anies, because Anies, are very close to Islamists. Yeah. Or if Ganjar passed through the first round and then Anies failed to advance the runoff, those Anies voters more likely to vote for Prabowo rather than Ganjar. But this is based on the current survey. So this doesn't necessarily mean that Prabowo is without weaknesses. And his performance in the presidential debate are very poor. So, yeah,
Very poor.
very poor. So, aside from repeating old narrative, he is easily provoked, especially by Anies Baswedan, who took offensive campaign position, provoking and attacking Prabowo weaknesses. So I'm sure if this will be exploited, Prabowo's electability could be eroded. So the critical point is that whether next month's election will result in one round or second round. If Prabowo Gibran fail to win in one round, it means there's still 3.5 months for Anies or Ganjar to defeat him. So 3.5 months, it's a long time to go. And of course now, if you look at social media, Anies very creative and innovative in utilizing social media. He launched Desa Anies or Challenge Anies. He also launched Nazar Pemilu. It's like self-promise. So his supporters promise if Anies win the election, they will provide meal for the poor, something like that. So this campaign generated enthusiasm among netizens. And at the same time, Ganjar now is also trying to repeat his old identity by greeting netizens, every day, using the same communication style as before. He is also trying to appear as politician, as candidate who is free from Megawati's shadow, because being portrayed as Megawati's cadre is not really good, to attract support, especially for non-PDAP voters. So everything can happen.
So watch
that's
this.
like Indonesian politics. So
Watch this
everything can
space.
happen. Thank you.
And pre and post election, we will have smaller events at ISEAS on this precise topic with other panelists who are going to be flying in after they do their field work in Indonesia. So please join me in thanking our two wonderful speakers. We'll sit here.